Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing Podcast. I am your co-host, Jamie Bateman, alongside my partner in crime, Christopher Seveny. How are you today, Chris?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you?
Good, sir. It's Friday. I mentioned right before this call, the Ravens took a Bateman in the first round last night, so I'm thinking somehow that's good luck for me and my family. I don't know. I'll take it.
uh, so my Patriots took a quarterback, which they definitely needed. But you sound very chirpy today. You're like very upbeat, on the intro. So did you have a good? Let's start. Did you have a good week, Jamie?
I did have a decent week. Some normal struggles in the note business, but overall, a pretty good week. Actually, we've been doing a lot with our rentals, but got probably looking like 5 out of 6 in Maryland that are going to be turning over here in the next couple months. So, but yeah, it was a good week overall.
Good.
How about you?
Not too bad. Did you want to share any more trials and tribulations along with that?
Or? So on the note side, did get a notification from a township about blight in a yard with one of my CFDs. So got some pictures sent to me.
Was that the mattress house?
Yes, you may have seen a few of those pictures. So
let me just pop in. Yeah. This house had probably like a dozen mattresses in like a half ripped open trailer. It looked like a dinosaur like chewed a piece of the trailer in the yard, and like mattresses just started shooting out of it. So you have to post that.
It's every one of these has a story, but this one I had to send to you because I'm just like, what is going on here? I mean, yeah, there's probably 7 or 8 mattresses that you can see that are kind of coming out of this, like you said, half-eaten trailer RV thing that looks like it was burned up or something. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, and then I actually sent it to it's a JV deal. I sent it to my JV partner, and his wife happens to have a couple Airbnbs. So I said, your wife, send this to your wife. Tell her she's not the only one with a cozy little Airbnb option. But I no clue what's going on there. We had done a mod recently, long story with this one, but I thought we were getting back on track. But at this point, may just have to push the legal button again and move forward with the forfeiture. So I'm giving her 2 weeks to get this removed. I've got 30 days before it comes back on me, and giving her 2 weeks, and then we'll start the legal process again. So that was one thing. Also have a deal that I'm selling that the buyer's title report has taken 16 days so far, and he still doesn't have it. So that's kind of surprising. So I was hoping to have had that one wrapped up, but been under contract for a month now. So see where this goes. There's a couple things I've been dealing with this week.
Actually, you just made me think of my note and bolt for the episode.
Oh,
thank you.
Hopefully you'll make me think of mine.
Yeah, so my week, a lot of weird legal oddities I had come up this week in many different aspects, which of course they all happen the week that my main attorney is on vacation, of course. So can't wait for him to get back and fill his email box with all these.
I'm sure he knows it's coming.
He's probably wondering, like, okay, why haven't I gotten many emails from Chris this week? Something's going on. Like, is he alive?
It's the calm before the storm.
Before the storm. Yeah, one of the things that I do though is just a personal thing. Like when people are on vacation, I try as much as possible not to bother them anyway. Like at work, my people who work for me, like I have somebody on vacation this week, unless it's something like I completely don't know an answer to and I need to give somebody, I'll shoot them an email. But other than that, I just let people enjoy their vacation, because when I'm on vacation, that's what I like to do. When I send an auto reply, it's like, hey, I'm on vacation, I'm back next week, and the person keeps emailing me, it's like, I don't know. It's personally, I just sometimes find it a little disrespectful. Let people enjoy their time. But that's just me. I digress already. Look at that. We're not even 5 minutes into the episode. I have a little timer now. I can see how long we've been recording. So my week, so a lot of legal oddities. We did reach a settlement on one property with a borrower for a short payoff that he was supposed to wire the money by Wednesday. Of course, he didn't because the money was in one type of account, which you can't wire from. So he's been taking like $3,000 a day out. So, so we're getting spoon fed that. Had a few REOs. The one that burned down, that we had burned down, we got that one under agreement to sell. So that one actually is supposed to close today. I got another property in Arizona that we had taken back. That's a 20-acre parcel that basically is just the land because the house and trailer on it are infested with drug needles and animals. But somebody wanted the land, which is good. So we got that one under agreement. I got an owner finance deal that was an REO under agreement. We took back a property in St. Louis, which it's funny. This house has like a beautiful front door and it looks nice from the outside. And then I feel like, you know, going into a Halloween store, you open the door and it's like, oh my God, you know, this house is a mess. But have some people looking at it because the, you know, ARV is anywhere from, I don't know, I've been told 100 to 125 maybe. It's a 4-bedroom house. Probably I'd say needs, I don't know, 50 to 75 grand, but also would make a really good rental because I think the rental rates in the area, you know, 800 to 1,000 plus maybe. I forget. Somebody told me numbers. I got them written down, but you see so many numbers. So yeah, so it's been a busy week. We did sell about 10 assets. Gonna have another tape coming out for people. Hope another note and bolt.
Oh man, you just reminded yourself of a note and bolt.
Yeah, I just remind myself. So mine is going to.
If anyone hears any background noise, we're having some minor construction going on outside.
So
anyway,
that's actually a debt collector banging on the door looking
for
Jamie.
Exactly.
So you know that's part of the stuff I had, and I fired my VA. So.
Oh, boom! You buried the lead there, sir.
Yes. Yes.
Just wasn't working out.
Well, when you don't show up for work in 3 days and don't reply to emails, it's kind of like, what do you expect? So
maybe she thought you were on vacation and she was treating you like you like to treat people on vacation.
Oh, okay. Maybe. So, but, so why don't we roll into today's main topic, which is we are going to be answering your questions. We are going to be going through some of the Facebook group and answering some of the questions that have come through that some have answers already, but I want to talk about them a little more in depth because when you reply online versus actually physically discussing it, it's much different. So,
yep. And for those who are not aware and just listening to this podcast for the first time, it's the Notes and Bolts from the Good Deeds Note Investing group. Is that right? I think I screwed it up.
And it's on Facebook.
On Facebook.
Our Facebook group.
Yes.
It's got a lot of people. It's not large, but it's got a lot of people. So
quality.
Yeah. Sorry, Jamie. So here's the one that I wanted to kick off because this one from your good friend Stephen Berkey was, as you scale your note business, how do you determine the amount of cash reserves to have?
Yeah, I think this is I answered it and I said, great question. I do think it's a really good question. So we don't really talk about this that much. It seems like everything in this space, my initial take is it depends because it really does depend on what kind of notes are you all about performers, non-performers? Is this an IRA? Are you running this like a business? Lots of variables. But I don't know if you have my answer in front of you, but I think I said something like a general rule of thumb might be, $1,000 per performer and $3,000 per NPL. And I did say, as you scale, I think you don't quite need that much because it's very unlikely that everything's going to go to crap with your note business all in the same week. So it's unlikely you're going to need all of a sudden $100,000 for legal fees in 1 week. But that's a good rule of thumb that I've kind of taken, lived, used, I guess. And then the other thing I threw in there was I like to hold back a few notes that I could sell partials on pretty quickly, just in case I run into a pinch and then all of a sudden I can get a cash infusion. So That's my initial reaction. How about you?
So first, I'm going to go back to yours, and I'm going to pick your brain on a few things. So
Okay.
let's take a non-performer. When you say $3,000, is that your complete holding costs, or is that on top of other costs you're already holding? You know what I'm saying?
So
So let's say you buy a loan for 20,000 and you got to go foreclose on the property.
mhm.
You know, are you saying you only keep 3,000 including for foreclosure, or is it on top of what you think all the other fees are going to be?
So when I wrote that, I initially meant $3,000 cash sitting there. So much of this is state dependent, and where
Mhm.
are you buying this? And it's the foreclosure process is almost over. Um, but my initial reaction with that answer was $3,000 total. No, I don't think that's enough if you're going to have to go through the legal process in New York, for example. But if it's a forfeiture, and um, in a non-judicial state, you may be plenty of money. So again, you may have $500 that you didn't need on another deal, that you could cover the difference there. But my initial thought was $3,000 total. Um, I just don't want to, it's that whole velocity of money, time value of money thing. I don't want to have too much money sitting in my LLC checking account, just sitting there doing nothing. So that was total. But what are your thoughts on that? Is that a little skimpy, you think?
Yeah, I think it's skimpy. So there's a few things. One is let's assume you're using your own money first, versus using OPM, other people's money. I would, and it's a really tough question because it depends on how many notes you have, the status of them. But I would typically want to carry what an anticipated foreclosure cost would be, plus an additional $2,500. So if I'm in, let's just say, Florida, you're probably going to spend around $7,000 to foreclose. I'd want an extra 10,000. If I was in Ohio, you're going to spend another 5 to 6. I'd probably still be around 10,000 from that perspective.
Yeah.
And it really depends. Also how many notes do you have? Because
Right.
as you have more notes, you can kind of pool some of that money to have a certain amount stockpiled.
Yeah.
You know,
The other thing is too, I've returned with some of my joint ventures. I've taken really too much up front, meaning, a little too conservative. And then, for example, we did a mod on this one that we're selling. Really didn't need much out of pocket. So it depends what your exit strategy is too. So,
Yep.
um, you know, I probably took a little bit too much to set that aside on that deal. So lowers the JV partners ROI a little bit, but I didn't need $5,000 for that one. Probably needed 1,000 for that, and that was a non-performing loan. So it
Yeah.
depends.
Yeah. And well, one thing I'll mention is if you're taking OPM, what you don't want to do is short yourself either. And that's that fine line that you got to balance. But one of the things I'll mention too, and I think this is important to clarify, you can have less if you have personal funds that you can just take and put back into the business as well.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this question is, I'm just getting started. I only have $20,000 to start, and I
Right.
have no other money. How much should I buy a note for, and how much should I hold in reserves? And
Yeah.
the question really comes down to, well, it matters, because if it's performing, you probably don't need as much. I mean, you could pay a little bit more. If it's non-performing, okay, is it occupied? Has the borrower been making payments recently? Where is the payment status? Because that, if you're thinking you're going to work a mod, or if they want a mod, then yeah, you could maybe hold a little less. But if it's somebody who hasn't paid in 4 years, you can't get in contact with, and you're thinking you're going to have to foreclose, then you're going to have to hold more, because the last thing you want to do is get caught in a situation where you run out of money and then you're forced to sell the asset.
The other thing I'll mention real quickly, and I know you did your presentation on this topic, was, costs that come up. What was that? The Cash Flow Expo.
Yeah.
Um, but there are lots of unforeseen costs, not only with the note itself or the asset itself. So, if you end up, even if you're in the beginning stages of running your note business, you're going to have other costs, software, if you're doing any kind of marketing budget, or if you have any kind of virtual assistant help, all kinds of licensing costs. So, when I say $1,000 or $3,000, that's really meant for the asset itself. You should also have some additional funds in your business account to run your business. So, yeah, but I think that gives a general ballpark answer for people.
Yeah, I would agree. And some of the people, actually, you were the only one that actually replied to that comment.
I guess it's, was the perfect answer.
I guess it was. So here's one that I just want to touch base upon because this gets asked a lot, and it's been answered. And I think everyone's pretty, I think you and I are pretty on the same page on this one. But it comes up a lot is, can you 1031 exchange a contract for deed, into another property?
Yeah. I mean, well, I say, yeah, no. First of all, it's a question for, your CPA, but
what's your CPA told you, I guess, is my question.
I haven't asked that, but I think Bob Malecki weighed in, if I remember correctly, and made it pretty clear that the IRS does not view a CFD or a note as real property. And so when you do a 1031 exchange, which may be going away, but
about
you have to.
So it only affects people like you.
Gotcha. You have to. So for those who are unaware what a 1031 exchange is, basically you can exchange an asset for another asset, but they have to be like assets. I forget what the actual phrasing, like kind assets. So if you've bought a rental property in the 1970s and now it's appreciated $2 million, you can exchange that for another property rather than selling that initial property and getting hit with lots of capital gains taxes and depreciation recapture. It's a way to kind of get around a big tax hit. And so can you do that from real estate to notes? No. I've never heard of someone doing it.
No, you can't do it with notes. But the other component people think is, well, contract for deed, I'm on title, so I own the property. But the intent of the contract for deed is, and I did ask my CPA this, but again, it's my CPA, not yours, so ask yours. You're not responsible for taxes. You're not responsible for maintenance. The underlying purpose is it's a loan, just like a note. And the land contract or agreement for deed is what securitizes that note, similar to a mortgage or deed of trust. So all it really is it's replacing the mortgage or deed of trust with a agreement for deed or land contract. So the intent is it's a loan, and notes are not, like we said, considered personal property, so they are not allowed to be exchanged. Now, somebody mentioned something about Delaware statutory trusts, and that's way up here for me. I've looked into them in the past, but I've got one or two other things going on in my life that I haven't had time yet to figure out those to try and, in my grand master plan of taking over the world in real estate, figure out how to implement those into my business yet. So
yeah, CFDs are can be confusing because in some ways they're seller financing and considered loans, and then in some ways they're not, like the blight in the backyard. I don't think the township cares whether all they know is I'm on title.
Well, the interesting thing is when they do see people on title that are from out of town, I think they target you personally.
Yeah, probably.
So Jamie, have you ever bought a note that was already in foreclosure?
I have not. I was helping somebody who just bought 5 in Baltimore, actually.
Are you mentoring
but
them?
Not officially. I was just helping him out a little bit. So been kind of working together a little bit over the last year or so,
Mm-hmm.
but and because I'm in the Baltimore area, I've got some connections as far as property managers and realtors and things like that. But so, but I think the one thing I did tell him was, and I think he was already going to do this anyway, but just keep your attorney in place. I mean, I think that came up in this question or some of the comments under
Yep.
this question, but
Mm-hmm.
I have not bought one that's already been in foreclosure. At this point, I'm not sure why not, but yeah, I'm sure. I know you have, Chris. Any insight
Yeah.
on this?
So I've bought several. One that rings a bell was one in Michigan, and I kept the same attorney, and they were awful. And I ended up, they were supposed to file the paperwork. They never filed anything. They were saying all the messages they weren't getting, but I had read receipts on them. And they basically, it said they filed the paperwork, and I kept asking from where is it? Where is it? And then they never gave it to me. And then find out they never filed the complaint. So I just was not happy with them. So I basically replaced them with the attorney I used a lot. So in some instances, while people say it's easier to keep that attorney, make sure you know who that attorney is. I've got one right now in West Virginia that I've kept the same attorney, and we had to get they had to go back after the title insurance company because there was an error on one of the documents. And it's interesting because you've been in title business before. They've gone back to the title insurance company back in January, and they still don't have an answer from them. That to me just seems really odd. So
Absolutely.
so I'm kind of
Yeah,
like,
with this,
who is this company type thing?
with the this small portfolio in Baltimore, I think three out of the five loans were they'd essentially completed the foreclosure process. It was just a matter of the courts, with COVID and everything, kind of catching up. So, or the eviction moratoria being lifted, that kind of thing. So the legal work was essentially done. At that point, I'm not switching attorneys. But yeah, I agree with you. You did the competence or the attorney you're using matters significantly. So
Yeah. So while it's probably recommended to keep the attorney, just make sure you're comfortable with them, because it also isn't a big deal to switch attorneys either. So just wanted to kind of mention that for people as well, because that is something that can easily be done, just like you are switching as the lender. So,
yeah.
okay. So let's see, what other questions do we have? I had them and I lost them. Have you ever bought loans past their the maturity date?
Yes. From you.
How'd it work out for you?
Well, it's still going. At least one that I can think of right now that's in New York, and so we'll see where it goes. But we've offered a couple of short payoff demands, and actually, the borrower just told our servicer that all communication needs to go through her attorney, but the problem is she never provided the attorney's contact information, and so it's kind of hard to do that when you don't have an attorney to talk to. But I think we still have some wiggle room on this one. The price point was pretty low, so it's okay if it ends up being kind of a loss. But I guess you've got your maturity date, and then each state has a statute of limitations after that maturity date. Well, most states do, and so yes, I have bought loans like that, but I haven't actually exited them yet. How about yourself?
Yes, I have. You have to be really, really careful, because there's so many nuances with once you get past the statute of limitations. Some states, whether the loan was signed under seal or not under seal, when was the last payment, can come into play. You might not be able to collect on the note, but you can on the mortgage or deed of trust. There's a lot that you really, really need to make sure you have an attorney thoroughly review it ahead of time, because I bought some that we looked at later on, and thankfully during due diligence I'm like, oh, these are good, and then when we looked at them again with the title and so forth, the attorney came back and did a secondary review after a conversations with them, came back and said, oh no, this one isn't recoverable. So it's been, got to be really careful. The ones that I see a lot of times now that last payment like 2009 and they mature in like 12 and 14 and stuff, I don't even look at those, because the odds of those being recoverable, or even if they are, the chance the property or anything is going to be in good condition and so forth, you're kind of most likely playing with fire on those. Yeah, you can get them super cheap, but are you actually going to make anything? It's almost like buying a second that's heavily underwater. If you're going to buy them, you better buy a lot of them and make sure you can try and hit on one of them.
That's true. That's a good point. Don't just buy one of those. And I would not recommend that for brand new note investors for sure.
No, either would I. So definitely not something I would recommend. Let's see. What other questions? Here's an interesting one, because this one comes up a lot, is and again, this is ask your CPA, but for people who invest with their self-directed IRA in a note fund, some, depending on who your CPA is and how the fund is operated, it shows up on an ordinary income line. So would you be, do you consider it UBIT, and have to pay the taxes on that, because it's ordinary income, which, certain ordinary income is subject to UBIT, meaning that if Jamie and I put up a lemonade stand on the side of the road and generated revenue, and we used seed money from somebody in an SDRA to fund the buying of the lemonade, that person would be subject to UBIT, because we are generating revenue actively from that purpose. Similar to, I think if you raise capital, it might be UDFI or one of those, but similar to if you borrow money in a fund, and we've got our fund, and we actually excluded that language altogether to give people peace of mind that we weren't going to include it. But I see this come up a lot. And Jamie, you've invested in funds in the past, correct? With your IRA?
That's never. Actually, well, yes, I have with my IRA. Has not come up yet at all.
Have you made money in that fund?
So I've invested in some funds outside of my IRA that have done well. The one from my current that I'm currently in is not making money currently, but it's a rather small amount compared to in the grand scheme of things. So, but no, that this question has not come up.
No. It's interesting because it comes up and it's really dependent on kind of who your CPA is. And that's why I want to bring this up, and why you really want to have a CPA that understands self-directed IRAs, notes, a lot of real estate and syndication. Because, we, in the funds I've run and the one we have together, we basically state that the intent of the fund is to buy notes, see if they get reperforming, hold them to eventually sell them, as part of liquidation. Is when we, sunset that period. We're not in the business to buy them just to flip them, buy them for a cheap price and sell them a week later. Now, you can do that with a few, but if that was your primary business, that would potentially be subject to, an IRA investor having to pay the taxes on that. But because you're holding these for a period of time, trying to get them worked out, it's more considered long-term. From that sense, it's not considered it. And I had that written up, and I've actually gotten opinions from IRA advisors and stuff, or I tell people, here's what we're doing, get your person to write something or put it on paper to give to your CPA, so you have something in the file that shows that, hey, I don't have to do, we don't believe this. So it really comes
down to whether this is a transactional business or an investment based business. Right.
And how the sponsors, what are they doing? Like I said, and that's an important question to ask as well, is, if you're investing in a fund, hey, is your intent to buy them just to flip them? Because if you're doing that, then that could trigger, some tax consequences for the borrowers. And typically most of these people are credit investors who are paying, 35+% plus state taxes and stuff, which is actually funny because Trey Lance got drafted number 3 last night by the San Francisco 49ers. And they were joking that even though he was drafted number 3 and his compensation is going to be about $6 million higher overall than number picks 4, 5, and like 6, his take-home pay is going to be a lot less, because I think they said in California, between state and federal, he's going to pay like at their home games like 50-something% in taxes, whereas Miami had pick number 5, which has no state income tax, so that person's going to be in the 35% bracket.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah. Would you rather have bragging rights of going 3rd overall, or would you rather keep more of your money?
So, well, you'd have to say too, what's the better situation, Miami or San Francisco?
Sure. Yeah. Long term.
Right. So I could argue.
We can do a football podcast after this one.
Yeah. Why don't we? We can talk notes in football. So. So I think, Jamie, I think we've answered some questions, and we've been on for a little while now. I think we could wrap up this episode. Try and keep it a little shorter for our listeners.
Sounds good. Yeah, I do think our Facebook group has a lot of really good interaction. People really find a lot of value in it. So if you're not in it, you should join it.
Absolutely. And leave us a review on iTunes as well.
Did you think of my note and bolt yet?
To yours?
Yeah.
No.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So you've got 1 or 2.
I got 2 notes and bolts. So my first one is, you take back an REO property and you get a BPO, make sure to do your own research as well. A perfect example is this land in Arizona. They wanted to list it for like $32,000. And I was like, hell no. I'm like, it's 20 acres and, is not a lot in that area, but it's still 20 acres. I'm like, list it for 50 grand, $49,999. First offer comes in at like 35. I counter, reject it. Get 3 days later, full price cash offer. Boom. So I say that because, again, the market's hot right now. Understand what it is you have, and also what else is available. There also wasn't a lot of properties available in this area at this time either, and a lot of people right now are looking for acreage and so forth. So pick up land at $2,500 an acre. I don't, that's pretty damn cheap, honestly. And this is in Arizona. Similar instances, I have a condo right now that we've been using as a rental, and we've decided that we're going to sell it. And, basically the listing agent, called me up and stuff, and he actually lives in the complex where this unit is. And he's like, there's not 1 unit for sale in the complex. And in this town, which is a small area out in Virginia, but it's out, 100 miles west of us. There's this little ski resort and golf course and stuff. So it's a nice little small area. He's like, there's only 3 properties for sale in this whole area. And there's about, he's like, I could name 24 buyers right now. So it's like perfect timing from that perspective. Yeah. So my note and bolt on number 1 is understand, do your own analysis on this. Same thing on BPOs, because I get people send me BPOs and they're low and I disagree with them. But, you want to do your own analysis. So that's 1.
Right.
Note and bolt number 2, my special. This can be Jamie's replacement. Okay. If you get an ad, and I'm stealing this one from you, Jamie, actually, or you can relate to this one a little bit. If you bid on an asset, okay?
Yeah.
You submit a bid, and the seller comes back to you and says, yes, I'm going to accept that bid, and you go dark on them, just be aware that you are probably never going to buy an asset from that person again. Okay? It's one thing to say, hey, I screwed up my bid or something happened, which in this case, actually, they didn't, because I had 3 bids within like $500 of this person. It's one thing to, they probably just didn't have the money, honestly. It's one thing to say, hey, look, something came up, something happened, I'm going to walk. To completely go dark, you will get blacklisted so quickly from somebody. And I had somebody do this, and it's like, oh, guess what? I just took you off my list, and I'm never even going to bother considering you again from that intention, because, there's these things called email. This device right here is called the phone. You can use it, and, you should use it, because if you don't have the stones to get back to somebody, it's disrespectful, it's unprofessional, and I recommend people not do that. So don't be afraid. something happens. Just I had one guy who was going to close on 2 assets and said, hey, last second something came up, I'm not comfortable with this one and I really don't want to close on it. Fine. I'm not the one who spent money on the due diligence and so forth. If somebody backs away on one of my assets, I'm not disappointed in the sense of you let me know. If you don't let me know, you are going to piss me off.
Yeah, it's just communication. We've talked about it before. I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody about accountability and follow through, someone in the note space as well, and just doing what you say you're going to do, right? But the one caveat we were talking about is things come up, life happens, right? Maybe you thought you had money to buy a note, and then, oh my gosh, you need to put your child in private school, and this isn't the right move, and but communicate. That's the critical part. And when you just ghost, it's no good in my book. So I do have a note and bolt. It's not really note specific per se, but I think people might. Chris is worried.
I have a note and bolt, but it's not note specific.
Okay. Well, now they're banging on the wall.
Okay. See, even they're like, what are you talking about?
Just end the podcast, Jamie. So it's personal finance related, and for people with kids, we started using this app called Greenlight. I have no reason to promote it or anything, no financial interest, but if you're into kind of trying to help your kids learn personal finance or budgeting, you can set them up with their own credit card and kind of set whatever controls you want with it. And it's a very user-friendly app where you can put money on the account, and kind of it enables conversation with your children about personal finance and taking control of your financial future. So hopefully somebody out there finds. Yeah.
Are you using it?
Yeah, with both my kids, primarily my daughter, 11 and almost 14.
Okay.
So, but what was interesting, my daughter, we went to we set this account up for her, and she got her own card and everything, and we actually went to get ice cream, and I had her pay for it because just kind of wanted to see how it worked and everything, and I just assumed she knew how to sign a credit card receipt. She's almost 14, no clue what to do, and I was like, wow. So little things like that come up that you kind of assume as a parent that your kids know, and they may not. So that little piece was enlightening for her and educational. So we are using it to answer your question.
Okay. There was a rumor actually at one point in time that, and again, this is no political affiliation or representation or support for any or candidate in a sense, but there was rumblings once like Donald Trump did like a PR stunt to like use an ATM machine or something, and he didn't know how to use an ATM. Which honestly,
I think I did read that.
Somebody with the amount of money they say he has, I don't see why he almost kind of need to use one, but I still would think you would know how. Interesting story. My last one was when we built our house, we bought a box truck to use to store materials, and we drive it around because we were buying stuff at auctions and stuff. This was a 80s, 27-foot box truck, like a U-Haul one you have and stuff. So it had, the windows, you have to roll down the windows, the phrase today. Kids don't understand when you say, hey, roll down your window. Why do you say roll down your window? So my daughter's like, we're in it drive one time. She's like, how do I put the window down? I'm like, you roll it down. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you gotta roll it down. So she starts rolling it down. She's like, at the time she was probably, let's see, 8. So she's probably like 8 or 9 years old. She's like, this is tiring. And I'm like, yeah, there's no little button you got to push nowadays. And look at all the technology you have. But just interesting things, even, as we grew up, that are very, very different now. So.
Yeah. Well, we take for granted.
We were able to drag this out to 40 minutes now, based on that, Jamie.
Nice.
But, I'd like to, again, thank everyone for joining us on this episode of the Good Deeds Note Investing podcast. Make sure to check out our prior episodes as well. Leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Amazon, Google, or your favorite listening station. And as always, go out and do some good deeds. Thank you, everyone.